Hi guys, welcome to a new episode of our podcast. Happy New Year, I guess. I guess you can still say that because we're still in Jan. It's a forever month. But
Oh yeah.
but anyway, so today we thought we'd talk about the 8 limbs of yoga, which maybe could have been a topic for a much earlier episode in our podcast, but I think it's also fitting now for the new year to kind of do almost a wrap up of things, um, of the well main pillars, I guess, of yoga. And I think we've kind of had episodes in the past about quite a few of them. I don't think we've done them all in like detail, but quite a few. So we're gonna go through that today, talk about each of them a bit. And I guess maybe in the future we could do a detailed episode on the ones we haven't done so far, if
Yeah,
that's of interest.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure. So that's just an overview today. So the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, where these 8 limbs of yoga are mentioned. The Yoga Sutras was created around the second century before Christ, and it's a foundational text in classic yoga philosophy. And it's divided into 4 chapters. We call them padas. And these 8 limbs that are called Ashtanga, they are detailed primarily in the second chapter. It's known as the Sadhana Pada, or the chapter of practice. So they refer to how we practice yoga through these 8 limbs. Ashtau means 8, and Ang means limb. So we have Ashtanga, the 8 limbs. So
And that's practically what you teach, right? In terms of yoga.
yes, exactly. It's incidentally, it's the name of a style of yoga as well. So yeah, one of the styles of yoga I teach, indeed, and the favorite one for me to practice. So these 8 limbs of yoga are said to provide a comprehensive framework of practice, of spiritual practice, and of self-discipline, of course. So they are, just to enumerate them from the beginning, they are yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. So we will talk about each of them. And the first 2 we have spoken about in pretty much detail, dedicating one entire episode to each of them, 8 in total. And of course, we always speak about asana generally when we talk about yoga, and also in the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. So we have yamas and yamas that we've done in detail. I think it's like episode 14 to 26 or something like that. So you can check them all out there. And I would say those are kind of guidelines for how to live your life, you know, externally, so to speak, as you interact with other people, and also for yourself, right? So yamas are more for how you interact with your environment and other people, and niyamas are self-reflection, let's say, self-awareness, right? Maybe if we were to kind of do a brief kind of summary on what they mean.
Yeah, that's exactly what they are.
Mm-hmm. That's how, yeah, we would see it. Mm-hmm.
So we would, so when thinking of the first limb of yoga, the yamas, they are indeed the moral restraints or guidelines on how to live, and they emphasize the importance of a life lived with integrity, um, with moral values as a foundation for personal and spiritual growth. So, in his Yoga Sutras, Patanjali outlines how practicing these moral codes helps us cultivate a harmonious relationship with others and with oneself. So, we have ahimsa, which is non-violence. We have satya, which is truthfulness. Asteya, non-stealing. Brahmacharya, celibacy or continence or fidelity. And we have aparigraha, which is non-possessiveness. So this is the guide on how to interact with the world. And then the second limb of yoga is, as you mentioned, the niyamas, and this is how we manage the relationship with ourselves. So the personal observances and practices that are aimed at self-purification or at self-regulation. So in his Yoga Sutras, Patanjali presents these observances as being essential for developing inner peace and solid spiritual practice, enabling us to work on our character, on our way of conducting ourselves in the world, and also inner purity is enhanced and addressed through them. And we have shaucha, which is cleanliness, santosha, which is contentment, being satisfied with everything. We have tapas, which is self-discipline, svadhyaya, self-reflection and studying. And we have ishvara pranidhana, which is surrendering to a higher power. So these are the first two limbs of yoga. Probably, Alex, I would say the most famous and well-known limb of yoga that is associated with yoga it's in itself, and about which many people think that it's just that's what yoga is, in spite of it being so much more, is the third limb of these eight, and it's called asana, physical posture.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the most popular, let's say. But I also think it's probably the easiest way to get into yoga, the most, let's say, relatable, quote unquote, right? Because, and the most, I don't know, easy to show. The easiest to show because it's just, first off, if you want to be active or if you're looking to increase your mobility or, even stretch, whatever, there's different types and different styles and different classes. That's how I would say you get into yoga. Although it's the third limb, it's the first for many people. And I think from there you can move on to the others. Maybe the next one might be pranayama, which is a giveaway for the next limb anyway, right? But you don't, and then yamas and yamas I think come later, although they're the first in the order here.
I absolutely feel the same about asana. I think it is the gateway through which most of us actually get into yoga and find out about what yoga is. And they find out that it's much more than that. And then maybe they study the other parts. Maybe they don't, which is equally fine. And it's very important for me to state and for people to understand that if you only do just asana out of the eight limbs of yoga, it's perfect. It's not a superficial approach. Is just embracing the fact that you take out of yoga what you need for yourself, and it's perfect. Ideally, you should also care or be curious about the others, but that's equally fine. At the same time, this is the right time to mention that if you do not practice asana but practice other limbs of yoga, that's also perfect because that's also yoga. So yoga not being just asana, as we can clearly see now through this episode, and as we have been stating for quite a while in our podcast, if you don't do the physical postures but you do other things, it's still yoga, and that's totally okay.
Yeah, although I do think asana is probably because of this. mainly, I guess, is probably, I don't know, 90%, maybe not 90. I don't know. I didn't check the studies if there are, but a big percentage of most people's yoga practice, I would imagine. Um, so yeah,
Indeed.
to your point, yoga is much more than asana, but it can only be that. But I think the more you get into it, the more you understand it's kind of a way of living overall. It encompasses everything, and it's more about how you live, how you practice it, let's say off the mat than on the mat. But regardless,
Exactly.
yeah, how you get into yoga and what you decide
Exactly.
to take away and practice and so on, I think that's individual, and it's good that you can do that because there are many, many options.
Yes, there are indeed many options, with asana being the most popular out of them. So, what is asana? So it's this limb focuses on physical postures, and they're designed to prepare the body for meditation. This is the only thing why asana as a limb exists in the first place. The fact that we developed it into a practice, a physical practice with much, much higher complexity than just the four initial poses that were created in the very beginning for the purpose of preparing the body for meditation is a secondary story. But initially, this limb existed to make sure that the body is ready to receive the benefits, the fruits of the meditation. So it has ended up becoming, the emphasis for strength, flexibility, stability, and the emphasis is on achieving a stable and comfortable seat, which allows us for prolonged meditation without discomfort. So, of course, asana is important on its own because it strengthens the body. It gives us more power. It makes us more flexible. It makes us more supple, leaner, more agile, more graceful. And of course, the whole point is for our bodies to function properly, because if they're not healthy and they don't function properly and they're not aligned with the principles of homeostasis and of general health, how would they be able to receive the fruits of meditation? How would we be able to achieve the greater stages of yoga and go through the higher up in the pyramid of these limbs? We wouldn't. So we do want a healthy body. We do want to build a healthy body through practicing asana, just so that we can have a generally healthy life, and so that we can practice other limbs as well, to be good with ourselves, to be okay with the world, to meditate, and hopefully to be more spiritually integrated with the world. Yeah, so that's why I think, as you also mentioned, asana is extremely important to practice.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also there's two things you mentioned there I kind of want to just add to from my experience, let's say. But the sitting in like a chair or whatever, like
Mm.
cross-legged position for longer periods of time to be able to meditate. I never realized just how challenging that was until I actually started doing yoga. And so sitting for 5 minutes in cross-legged without different pains and without wanting to scream and run away, it's quite challenging, especially at the beginning. So I kind of want to recognize that. It looks very easy,
Mm.
and it might be easier depending on where you are, let's say, with your body and where you are as a character as well. Like if you're, usually the type of person that can sit, in peace for a while, or not, it can be more or less challenging. I found it quite intense. I don't anymore, but it's taken me quite a while to get there. So I did want to add that. And then also just your point, you do the asana to have a healthy body, so then you can meditate and do the other, practice the other limbs maybe. And yeah, I think that that makes a lot of sense also because if you don't, let's say, have a healthy body or healthy enough body, you're not going to be interested in more, let's say, advanced, quote unquote, whatever you want to call it, different other things. If you're, your main concern is going to be about you being healthy, really, right? At the end of the day, that's really, if you're not, if you're sick, you're not going to care about pretty much anything else, which makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And practicing physical postures also enhances proprioception, how we perceive our body into the world and into the space that surrounds us, into the ether, as we say in yoga, that surrounds us. So if we don't have increased awareness, how can we meditate? we can. How can we have a mind that's clear or a mind that is sharp or focused? Because we can't even keep our spine straight. What's the spine? Where are my shoulders? And for people who lack proprioception, they're like, you tell them to sit straight and to have the shoulders on the same line, and they're like, but I am straight. Like, no, you're not. So practicing the physical limb of yoga, right? The third one, the asana, is what makes us more aware and what sets the ground for meditation. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
And then in yoga, we say, what was that called? Shtiram Sukham Asanam. That posture, which is comfortable and easy, and you're exactly referring to what you mentioned a few seconds ago. Obviously, we cannot let our mind meditate. We're not able to do so if we have pains and aches here and there. So let's meditate into a posture that already feels comfortable, with a slight discomfort that keeps us aware. Obviously, a long-term, solid, constant practice is what will unblock the tight spots in the body, and postures that feel challenging now will end up feeling Shriram Sukhamasana will end up feeling like postures that are comfortable and easy. Yeah, but this comes in time. So that's what I
yeah,
wanted to
yeah.
say. Really important.
Um, I think that's, and people have heard me say this before in other episodes, but again, it comes to mind very easy, let's say, posture, which is downward dog, which, as I said, it's supposed to be a resting posture. But I remember at the beginning, I was like, there's no way, how? So, but with time, it does become a resting posture. So yeah, indeed, what you were saying, right? So, well, like with everything, at the beginning can be more challenging, but sometimes you see them and you have a false, I guess, impression that they might be easier than they
Uh-huh.
actually are.
Because that's what you see from the outside, right?
Right.
But
Yeah,
when you're in
exactly.
them, when you actually practice the pose, and as a yoga teacher, you easily see this because, for instance, you have a few minutes or tens of minutes of intense vinyasa practice, and at some point you tell the class, hey, so, we're now going to sit down, and before that, if you want to take rest, um, 3 to 5 breaths in a resting pose, and you will see long-term practitioners will take downward facing dog, while beginners will take balasana, child's pose. So yeah, they definitely don't feel like downward facing dog is a resting pose. Some of them do, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And many others, but I think these are very, let's say, practiced in yoga, right? Everybody does the down dog and everybody sits cross-legged.
Yeah, super
At least,
basic.
right, right.
Yeah.
Um, right, so that's the third one, and then I think the fourth one is pranayama, which is breathing techniques, right? And we actually did at least one episode on breathing techniques, if not more than
Yeah.
one, like going into details on the, let's say, more popular ones.
Yeah.
Um,
We exemplified
and
them.
yeah.
Yeah.
hmm and I think this actually goes hand in hand, let's say, with asana. Like if you, for the people that have done yoga would know this, if you go to a yoga class, usually you would always be taught the posture linked with your breath, and maybe you would practice even like different breathing techniques as you go through the class, depending on what type of class it is, and if it's more calming or more dynamic, whatever, right? But it's very much intertwined, I would say. So you almost, if you get into asana, you almost practice pranayama to a certain degree too.
Absolutely.
I guess maybe it depends on the type of yoga, but at least in vinyasa and probably in others, you have that element added to it.
You have it and it's emphasized throughout the asana practice, or it is taught at the beginning or at the very end of the class, just to finish, to crown, to complete the asana practice. So in some styles of yoga, you have a special type of breath that you have to develop and to hold and to manifest throughout the entire length of the asana class. And in some others, you can just practice some techniques at the end, as a completion of your physical practice. So yes, it's about the breath, but in fact the yogis or the Yoga Truth Sutras say that it's about controlling the life force, and in yoga we call that prana. It's energy, right? It's what we get out of breathing, out of food, out of interacting with other people, and so on and so forth. It's the fuel of existence itself. And depending on what other systems of thought or what other cultures we refer to, we encounter it in under different names. For instance, we have Tai Chi. So Chi is prana. Chi is this energy that we call prana in yoga. So we manipulate this prana through breath regulation, right? Through breathing techniques. And we do that because this enhances the flow of prana in the body, and it helps calm the mind. So we find plenty of different breathing techniques in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And just as asana is expected to do pranayama, the fourth limb of yoga is meant to prepare the body, purify it, make it cleaner, make it even readier to receive the fruits of meditation. So if we look at it, every single limb of yoga prepares us for the final one. We go through each
For
of
the
them
final boss, yeah.
to bring the foundation for the final boss. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which we're gonna give away in a minute what that is, but yeah, I think also practicing pranayama helps with breathing in general. I guess that's just common sense, but it does help you breathe better and deeper. And I don't think we realize, or I didn't before I started yoga, actually just how shallow our breathing is.
Oh, yes, you're
Just
so right.
just on a general note. And I think that when you do start, you could, let's say, get a bit dizzy right at the beginning when you try to breathe deep. But what I would say, don't worry, that will pass. It's just at the beginning. It's just because we're not doing it really. But of course,
Absolutely.
that then helps develop that for you. And in time, you can, it helps with your cardio, it helps really with your breathing, which, it's an added benefit, I'd say.
Yeah, massively so. Massively so, absolutely, to a higher extent and to a high degree. I was taught during yoga teachers training that pranayama can do a lot of damage if it's not practiced correctly, and this is absolutely true. I speak from experience. And it's also that you want to purify the body through the previous limbs before you get to pranayama, because if you practice pranayama and you haven't had much sleep, or you have ingested a lot of heavy foods, red meat, alcohol, if you're a smoker, it can really mess with your head and with your body. We might hyperventilate, the brain might get drunk on too much oxygen, and so on and so forth. So generally, it must be practiced under supervision, especially at the beginning. If you do something for the first time, it's always a good idea to not do it on your own following YouTube or whatever. But yeah, this is not to say that if we are worldly characters and we eat meat or something, we cannot practice pranayama. No, there are techniques that work. We just have to be really careful. Kundalini yoga that is based on a lot of playing with the breath can be really problematic if you practice it for the first time. I don't know if it happened to you, but for me, it's one of the most difficult types of yoga because there's a lot of kapalabhati there and other heavy breathing techniques that you practice while holding asanas, while holding poses. So it's quite difficult for me to, you know, to undertake. But
Right.
it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because your advice is totally opposite to what I've done. So,
If you're okay,
from
this is
the
what matters.
from the stories of do as we say, not as we do, or at least as as Monica says, because yeah, I did exactly what you said. I just started doing it, after YouTube, let's say yoga with Adrian, which is very famous, and there were breathing techniques there, and that's why I said, I got dizzy at the beginning, but they were
Mm.
all fine. So yeah, maybe don't do
Yeah.
that. I don't know.
Yeah. Take it easy.
But anyway, or maybe just don't overdo it, I guess. But that's usually in life, don't overdo it, if you can. Right. So these are the first four ones, and then the last four ones I would say are really meditation, right? It's
Exactly.
prepping for meditation,
Yep.
and then fulfillment or oneness or
Yeah.
whatever is just the
The
final
climax.
boss,
The
right?
boss.
Yeah, the boss,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
meditation boss. So to your point, they're all really geared up to that. But I guess the last four are even more so, and are the ones that I will say I'm not so good at meditation, so
Yeah. Me
I
neither, but
didn't
I
master
try.
them.
I try. It's good to give it a try, and the more you try, and the less you give up on it, the better it becomes. So eventually, it's supposed to be a constant in our lives. That's how it's a great tool to keep us healthy and sane. So I will make a nice pack or package from the following three because they are pretty much intertwined. So it's Pratyahara, Dharana, and Dhyana. Pratyahara is the withdrawal of the senses inwards. So as I like to call it, it's when you push the shutdown button on the outside world. So you try to just be swimming in your own inner being. And there are even specific asana, specific poses through which we make that easier to happen. For instance, it's this pose called Pavan Muktasana. And it's in English we call it the wind releasing pose. Is when you lay on your back and you hug your knees and you put your nose and your forehead to your knees and you hug the knees tightly to the chest. This is really something nice to do when you have stomach aches, of course, but also very good because it helps you really disconnect from the outside noise and really helps you focus inward. So basically, Patanjali describes this process of disengaging from the sensory distractions. And he mentions that this stage of yoga is crucial for attaining the concentration that's necessary for meditation. So that's about it. So it
So
allows,
you're
yeah,
practicing in a ball, right?
literally, yeah, and figuratively and literally in a bowl. You're in your own universe, and if something happens around you, it should sound to you like a very distant noise that doesn't bother you because you're already tucked down inwards, right? And this allows for deeper concentration, inward reflection. This is literally what it is, right? Inward reflection. Yeah, and mindfulness. So together with Pratyahara, we then move on to Dharana, which is developing the ability to concentrate on a single point or object. This might be just your breath. You're simply aware of your breath. So you have focused inward, you have shut down the outside world, and now you just listen to your breath. Or you are focusing on a mantra. For instance, the mantra Aum. I don't know. You try to meditate upon the mantra Aum. So this is also, just like Pratyahara, preparing the mind for meditation. And Patanjali outlines some techniques to develop mental focus, for the mind to be sharper. And he emphasizes that this concentration, this super sharp laser beam-like quality of the focus is essential for transitioning towards the seventh limb, which is actually meditation itself, dhyana, we call it. And I wanted to mention here that in some types of yoga, we have drishti, which is focusing our gaze, our eyes on one single point of focus, and it helps a lot. This element of performing the dharana helps a lot with being there, being aware. It's an element of happily marrying a happy marriage between the breath and the body, right? Which is a super important condition, prerequisite for meditation. And meditation is dhyana. So it's the seventh limb of yoga, and so it's the practice of meditation itself, the one that we were complaining about earlier, that we were not very happy with our progress, or that it's not very easily attainable. Yeah, it's difficult indeed. If we go through the other stages at first, it becomes more attainable, I would say. So it's a state of focused awareness. No, this is what it is. And contemplation. And this contemplation has to be undistracted. That's why we gathered our senses inwards and through pratyahara, and that's why we focused on the object of meditation through dharana, the sixth limb. So dhyana involves a calm mind and for our attention to be steady. And it fosters inner stillness, self-reflection, insight. So if we want to make it more concrete, it's literally what this American psychologist of Hungarian origin called Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi mentioned. It's the state of flow. So you're in a state of flow whenever you focus so deeply and so to such a higher extent upon something that you become one with it. It's it's like when you're deeply engrossed in sewing or driving or scrapbooking or working with beads, with jewelry or painting, not necessarily an artistic activity, of course, but something, not necessarily something creative either, but something that you are so engrossed in that the outside world no longer exists. It's just you and that object. And you have become the flow. You're in a state of flow.
Right.
So
Yeah. And I think that's a dead giveaway for the last limb, right? You become
yeah,
one with the object of meditation, which is samadhi, right?
exactly. Or nirvana, as some of us call it. So it's the culmination, the climax of the yoga practice, and the eighth limb of yoga, as described in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. So it's a state of union with the object of meditation, leading to a profound sense of bliss, peace, self-realization. And what I really love about this one is how we aim to, or how we end up feeling that we are one with the object with which we meditate. So there are no boundaries or borders. There's no distinction between I, who meditate, and the object upon which I meditate. We're both one. So this distinction dissolves, and it leads to the ultimate goal of yoga, this experience of oneness with the world, of union. So
Right, which I don't know, Monica, if you've achieved that, but before you answer, I do want to kind of just, you were mentioning about the drishti, right, and the focus to in earlier, to help you get to meditation and oneness at the end. And I was just going to say that that also helps you with balance, just as a side note. So as you go through your asana practice, you kind of want to practice that to be able to balance in different postures. And so that I would say, actually, it's an added bonus, if you will, to the fact that if you do want to strive to meditation, which it's good to strive to. I don't know. It's just asana is more, I guess, because you do a bit of breathing and you do a bit of focus and things like that. Anyway, just thought I'd add that. But yeah, so have you reached this? Do you feel like state of oneness, let's say?
I don't feel I have. I think it's really difficult to attain such a state if we don't dedicate ourselves to this goal. And if you live a life where you have a lot of social obligations, and if you live in a busy urban landscape, literally and figuratively, then it's difficult for you to focus. Also don't think we should be making this our goal. I think we just practice for the sake of practice. It's really difficult to live in the city and be a worldly person and attain samadhi. I think it's bullshit. I don't think. Well, this is not to say that we should not be attempting it. One of my favorite types of meditation is trataka. And this entails meditating upon something that's not moving. It can be a black dot printed on an A4 piece of white paper. It can be a photo. It can be a representation of a deity. If you're faithful, if you're Christian, if you have, a relationship with your God or whatever. Icoană in Romanian, right? It can be meditating upon a photo, I think I said that, and also the flame of a candle. And it's something so simple yet so powerful, because it brought me really, really close to some higher ecstatic states that I didn't think I would touch. So maybe find what works for you and what brings you higher and higher, and do that. For me, it's this type of meditation that we call trataka. I like candles a lot. What can I say?
Yeah, that is interesting. And actually the I didn't know it was called that. I knew about this in the
Oh,
particular example of the flame of the candle. So that's the
yeah,
one part I've heard.
yeah.
Which does sound interesting. And yeah, I guess I also like candles and girls like
It
candles, so
is.
here we are.
Yeah, just an
I mean
example.
everybody does. I don't know. Is there I guess everybody does. It's not really particular like female thing necessarily. But anyway, yeah, that's interesting. I don't think I've tried it. I don't recall doing it. And yeah, I totally agree with you that it's, as the cliche goes, so to speak, it's all about the journey, right?
Exactly. And practicing yoga is the full, complete embodiment of this saying. Yes, it's all about the journey. Because unknowingly, you will end up closer and closer, and you will grow more and more. And this is perfect. That should be the goal, to grow, not to reach samadhi, in my humble opinion. Yeah. So
Right.
let's
Yeah.
wrap it up
Yeah, right, right.
with
And if
with the
if that
links.
happens, I mean, that would be, awesome. But if it doesn't, it's also awesome. I guess that's kind of
Yeah,
um the idea there. But yeah,
exactly.
that's our 8 links of yoga. And I think maybe, as I said, in a future episode, we might do the more detailed how to prep for meditation, maybe, and how to um, achieve at least meditation for a while. And yeah, thank you for listening to us. If you made it this far, thanks very much, and we will see you next time with a new episode.
Thank
Bye,
you very
guys.
much. Bye.